need a legitimate apprentice program that leads young people from college or training into a job. Having jobs invest into America. Would you understand that we have the lowest number of white males going to college, the lowest number of African Americans going to college, the lowest number of Latinos?
Expired.
Can I get 30 seconds?
Yeah, the gentlelady's yielded an additional 30 seconds.
Gentlelady's recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank the distinguished gentleman. We need investment in human resources. And all we're doing today is denouncing and ridding ourselves of the obligatory responsibility that we have when we take an oath to this Constitution every 2 years. And so I don't want to be a spoiled sport today. I believe we should tighten our belt. There are many ways of doing so. Looking at the financial transactions on Wall Street or the Chicago commodities, many ways to do it. But this is a stranglehold on our neck. I refuse to cut seniors, children, Social Security,
Gentleman from Texas
because you won't do your job. This is a bad amendment. I will not vote for it.
Gentleman from Texas recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt, member of the Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution offered by my friend from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte. I'd like to thank Mr. Goodlatte for his leadership on this important legislation, and as a co-sponsor of this measure, I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this balanced budget amendment. Our nation's staggering debt and reckless borrowing illustrate the urgent need to implement real institutional change in Washington. For far too long, members of both parties have routinely chosen the politically expedient course over what is in the best interest of our nation, casting aside any spending pledges or statutory caps and pushing our nation further along on a careless spending binge with devastating consequences for the people of Virginia's 5th District and all across our country. We as a nation now face a $15 trillion debt that nearly equals the size of our entire United States economy. We are running a $1.3 trillion deficit, and we are borrowing over 40 cents on every dollar we spend. This dire debt crisis not only threatens our economic recovery by stifling job creation, but it also threatens the very future of our country. Given the seriousness of our current fiscal situation and Congress's abysmal record of fiscal management, it is critical that we put institutional spending reforms in place that will force the government to live within its means, just as families, businesses, and state governments do in Virginia and across the country. By passing a balanced budget amendment, Congress will be required to spend no more than it takes in, reining in out-of-control spending once and for all. As I travel across Virginia's 5th District, I continually hear from my constituents, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, who say that if we are serious about turning our economy around, and if we are serious about preserving this country for our children and grandchildren, we must put an immediate end to Washington's out-of-control spending. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this bipartisan measure so we may implement the structural framework necessary to put our nation back on a path to fiscal sustainability for the sake of future Americans. I thank the gentleman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot about the members on the other side of the aisle trying to take credit for the fiscal responsibility in the 1990s. I think we need to review what actually happened during those years. I came into Congress in 1993, and the first tough votes we had to cast were on the budget. And we passed a tough budget. And it passed by 1 vote in the House and a tie-breaking vote by the Vice President in the Senate. Not a single Republican voted for that tough budget. In fact, it's that budget that we're talking about that laid the groundwork for the fiscal responsibility for the 1990s. And on that vote, when the last vote was cast by Marjorie Migolas-Straczynski from Pennsylvania, the members on the other side of the aisle did not congratulate her for casting the tie-breaking vote to pass the bill. They started chanting, "Bye-bye, Marjorie," and she was defeated with that vote in her next election. In fact, she was defeated along with almost 50 members of the Democratic Party who voted for that budget. In 1995, when the Republicans came in with a majority, they tried to dismantle the budget. And in fact, President Clinton vetoed all of those budgets that they had offered, and we shut down the government rather than to rather than to dismantle that plan. Finally, when the deficit had gone from $290 billion down to less than 25, then the members of the other side of the aisle join on as we cross the finish line. Well, that's about like showing up at the ribbon cutting after you have voted against the stimulus bill. All of the tough votes had been cast. All of the hard work, all of the political damage had been suffered, and now all of a sudden they want to come in and take credit. What they can take credit for is President Clinton vetoing their bills. If you want to know what would happen if they had been signed, we found out in 2001. Because as Chairman Greenspan had to answer questions of what's going to happen if we pay off the national debt too quickly, and we were on charge for paying off the national debt after the first tax cut. That was the last time you heard anybody talking about paying off the national debt. 2 tax cuts not paid for, 2 wars not paid for, prescriptive drug not paid for, and now we find ourselves in the ditch. Balancing the budget is arithmetic. You got to pass some unpopular votes. You got to raise taxes and or cut spending, and you're going to make some political enemies doing either one. This legislation doesn't help us make those tough choices. In fact, it makes it even more difficult. People say, well, we need a constitutional amendment to force us to balance the budget. This legislation doesn't force us to do anything. It makes it more difficult. Read the bill. If we want to pass something, we had a hearing on it a couple of days ago when the former governor of Pennsylvania said that the balanced budget provision in the Pennsylvania state constitution was a good idea. And I asked him, what provision in this legislation can be found in the Pennsylvania Constitution? None of them. None of the provisions of the of H.J.Res 2 can be found in any state constitution other than the title. And so here we are talking about the title but not the provisions of the bill. The major provision in this bill is a 3/5 requirement to pass a budget that's not in balance, which incidentally would cover every budget that we considered this year. Now, I think it's fair to say that the most fiscally conservative budget on the table was a Republican study group that got a few votes, not anywhere close to a majority. And if that's your goal, why would raising the threshold from a simple majority that you couldn't even get up to 3/5 would make it more likely that you could pass that tough kind of budget? In fact, once you decide that you need 3/5, which we would have to pass any budget we considered this year would be 3/5. Can I have an additional 2 minutes?
The gentleman is yielded an additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Once you have ascertained that even this Republican study group budget would require 3/5, any budget, responsible or irresponsible, could pass with the same 3/5. In fact, you could cut taxes with 3/5. You could raise spending. You could have a totally irresponsible budget with 3/5. So why is it more likely that you're going to be fiscally responsible with 3/5 when you've never been able to get even a simple majority? When 3/5, last December we passed an $800 billion tax cut, putting us $800 billion further in the ditch. We got 3/5 for that. But try to get 3/5 for a meaningful deficit reduction plan. This legislation will make it more difficult to balance the budget. All of this debate has been about the title, how nice it would be to balance the budget, but we ought to read the bill and point out that the provisions of this bill will actually make it more difficult, probably impossible, to ever balance the budget, and we will end up trying to get 3/5 vote ending up with worse budgets than we would have under the present system.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, gentlemen. I need to comment on the revisionist history that we're hearing. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that tough votes are made when Congresses make the decision to balance the budget. That decision wasn't made in 1993 when the Democrats voted to raise taxes. It was made when we sent a budget to the President that he vetoed, the government shut down, and after that shutdown, then and only then did President Clinton get in favor of welfare reform and other things that led to a slowing of the rate of growth in government spending, and he calls it a ribbon cutting to vote for a balance. I'd ask for an additional 30 seconds.
An additional minute.
Gentleman's
He calls it a
recognized.
ribbon cutting to show up and vote for budgets that are actually balanced. The gentleman from Virginia, my good friend, voted against all four of the budgets that were balanced in the 1990s and leading up to 2001.
You yield back your time.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague from Texas, Mr. Canseco, member of the Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we are taking an important step towards changing the way Washington does business. And it couldn't come at a more opportune time as our national debt crossed the $15 trillion threshold this week, which means that now, on average, every American household's share of the national debt is $127,899. Our nation is in the midst of a spending-driven debt crisis. We've run 3 successive $1 trillion-plus deficits. We are borrowing approximately 40 cents out of every dollar the federal government spends, and the CBO estimates that by the end of the decade, we'll be spending almost $1 trillion just to pay the interest on our debt. If we do nothing, the problem will get worse. We'll continue spending, borrowing, and accumulating more debt until one day our children and grandchildren and their futures are drowned in a sea of red ink. Our inability to get our fiscal house in order will leave them with a downsized American dream. As a father of 3 children, this is something I refuse to do. I'm the son of Mexican immigrants who came to this nation to provide their children with a better life and to live in a land where my opportunity would be limited only by how hard I worked and how big I could dream. I want to ensure that America remains a land of limited opportunity for our children and our grandchildren. I don't want the legacy of this generation of Americans to be that we're the first generation of Americans to pass on a smaller American dream to our future generations. For too long, our nation has spent far beyond its means. We've run up a national credit card, borrowing from our children and grandchildren's future to pay for spending today. We need to cut up the national credit card and make sure the dire situation we've gotten ourselves into never happens again. And a balanced budget amendment will do just that. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time does each side have, please?
Gentleman from New York has 36 3/4. Gentleman from Texas has 1 hour and 4.5 minutes.
And we'll reserve at the moment. Thank you.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, control the balance of my time.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise, who is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank the gentleman from Virginia for yielding time to me to speak about this important issue. I really want to thank him for bringing this to the floor because this is one of those rare bipartisan pieces of legislation that Congress brings forward that is so critical to the future of our country. You know, a balanced budget amendment is an idea that is long overdue. If you look at where we are right now, some of the biggest challenges facing our country come from the fact that Washington continues to spend money it doesn't have. This nation just passed the $15 trillion threshold in debt. Just in the last 2.5 years since President Obama has been in office, another $5 trillion, mountains of debt that have been added to the backs of our children and grandchildren. It's irresponsible to keep dumping this debt on the future generations. It hurts America's ability to grow. It holds America's promise back, and it's got to stop. If you look at what is important about this debate, a balanced budget amendment will finally bring permanent accountability in place to force Washington to start living within its means, to tell Washington you can't keep spending money you don't have. And yet you listen to this debate, you know, and there are Republicans and Democrats supporting this concept that's long overdue to require a balanced federal budget, but of course there are opponents as well. And if you listen to what some of the opponents have been saying, they've called it reckless. 49 states do this. Families all across the country balance their budget, and they call it reckless to live within our means. And what I would finally say in conclusion is that we have got to put these reins on Washington spending. We've got to give this promise to the next generation. Stop playing politics. Let's pass this amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd point out the 49 states borrow for capital budgets. They have balanced budget amendments for operating budgets. This makes no distinction. It would not let us borrow ever. I will continue to reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Speaker, I yield myself 15 seconds to point out that this does allow you to borrow. You just have to have a supermajority and a special reason to do so. And I'd point out if the states had anything like the proportionate debt that's constituted by this government today of $15 trillion, they wouldn't be borrowing much money either. At this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Duffy, a member of the Financial Services.
Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. This was not the version that I supported. I wanted a version that had spending caps linked to GDP. But as this week we passed the $15 trillion debt mark, I thought it was important that this House come together and figure out a way to control its spending. But to look at our recent history, this House conference on the GOP side passed a budget this year that brought our country to balance. And all our Democrats across the aisle, well, not all, most of them voted no. They never offered a counter-proposal that could bring our budget to balance. The Democrats in the Senate haven't proposed a budget in 900 days. We need to be serious about this debt. And today, as we have $15 trillion in debt and we have historic interest rate lows, let's look out 10 years. When the debt is $25 trillion and we go from historic low interest rates to historic norms. If we can't balance the budget today, is it going to be easier 10 years from now when it's $25 trillion and we have more people on Social Security and Medicare? My friends across the aisle like to pull out Social Security, Medicare, and the needy. And you know what? I care about those constituents in my district as well. But we have to be honest about what we're doing. We are borrowing this money from China. We have given them an economic nuclear bomb. We are bankrupting this country, jeopardizing the freedom of our next generation. Let's make sure we pass this balanced budget amendment, and let's rely on the American people to fund the obligations that this House makes. With that, I encourage all of my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's now my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Platts, who is chairman of the Government Organization Subcommittee of the Oversight and Reform Committee.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the chairman for yielding and especially thank him for his great leadership on this very important issue. I rise in favor of this legislation. The federal government is currently borrowing close to 40 cents of every dollar that it spends. Our $15 trillion national debt has grown to be as large as our entire economy. One of the most important actions that Congress can take to restore fiscal sanity to Washington for generations to come is to adopt a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. I've co-sponsored a version of a balanced budget amendment every session since first being elected to Congress, including the measure that we are debating here today. This proposal will impose a similar requirement for annually adopting a balanced budget as currently exists in 49 states, recognizing a common-sense exception for defense under limited circumstances. The idea of a balanced budget amendment is not new. One of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, was a strong proponent of this idea. More recently, in 1995, has been discussed. Following passage by the House of Representatives, the United States Senate came within one vote of sending this version of the balanced budget amendment to the states for ratification. Since then, our total national debt has nearly tripled. A balanced budget amendment to the Constitution will help to restore fiscal integrity in Washington, boost confidence in the American economy, and stop Washington's practice of saddling future generations with an insurmountable level of debt. The adoption of a balanced budget amendment has the strong support of the overwhelming majority of Americans. Our constituents get it. We can't continue to spend money that we don't have. It is time for Washington to get it and to heed the will of the American people. We should pass this legislation and thereby allow our state legislatures the opportunity to ratify this common-sense addition to the United States Constitution. With that, I yield back and thank the gentleman for yielding.
The gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York.
Speaker, I now yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding time. I haven't heard this said since I've been sitting on the floor listening to the debate, but if anybody has said it, I want to express my agreement with them. We cannot continue to spend more year after year after year than we receive. That is unsustainable, and with that, I cannot argue. However, I disagree that we need a balanced budget amendment to make that point. I have no balanced budget amendment to operate my household. Some years I have borrowed money and gone in debt, and some years I have accumulated a surplus and paid down that debt. I'm sure that's the way every American citizen operates their life, trying to make responsible decisions, not hiding behind some subterfuge like a balanced budget amendment. Being responsible. I went into debt to go to college. It was a wonderful investment because I wouldn't be here today if I had not done that. And I paid that debt back in some years where I generated surpluses in my household to be able to, as a result of going to college. I went into debt to buy a house. It's been a wonderful investment. The house has a lot more value now than what I paid for it. It is part of my assets. And one of these days, I'm going to pay that debt off. But I'm still, if you count that, operating in a deficit situation. There are some years that I'm in surplus. There are some years that I'm in deficit. The one thing I do know, whether I'm in deficit or surplus, I count the income and I count the expenditures. Balancing a budget is not just about how much you spend, it is also about how much you take in, and the government's only source of taking in money is tax revenues. So for somebody to come in here and lecture me about a balanced budget amendment when they jumped up from discussions and said, I'm not going to talk about revenues in an effort to balance the budget, I'm just going to have you talk about expenditures, that is unacceptable to me. Let's grow up in this institution, act responsibly, make tough decisions, and we can get out of this deficit situation and we can pay off the debt. We have proved it. We proved it while I was here in this body. We got to the point that Chairman Greenspan at that time was saying, hey, I'm worried that you're going to pay off the national debt too much, too fast, and it's going to be deflationary. Republicans were not in control then. We didn't have a balanced budget amendment then. Give me 30 seconds and I'm going to stop.
Gentleman is yielded an additional 30 seconds.
We didn't have a balanced budget amendment then. We acted responsibly and not with a single vote from the people who are here lecturing us today and saying they need a balanced budget to stand behind. That's like standing behind my mother's skirt. Grow up. Make responsible decisions. Quit going into wars that we can't afford to pay for and not paying for them.
Make some responsible decisions, and you won't need this skirt to stand behind. We don't need this. It's irrational. The American people know it's irrational because they know that balancing a budget is a function of income and expenditures. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to respond to the gentleman. If the gentleman's complaint is that there have been decisions made during Republican Congresses that he doesn't agree with, that spent too much money, that didn't yield to balancing budgets, the gentleman is correct. But the gentleman neglects to point out that there have been many, many Democratic Congresses in the last 50 years, 37 of them, of which only 2 resulted in a balanced budget. That is not a good record either. And in fact, during the 1990s, when we were fortunate enough to receive 4 balanced budgets, I yield myself an additional 30 seconds, those balanced budgets were under Republican Congress and a Democratic president. And in point of fact, it was only after there was a confrontation about the level of spending and a government shutdown that the necessary reforms were made to slow the rate of government spending so we could achieve those balanced budgets. And the gentleman from North Carolina takes credit for his vote in 1993, which I did not agree with. I'm going to take credit for my 4 votes that were balanced budgets in 1998 through 2001, which he voted against. So we need bipartisan support for a rule in our Constitution that requires that the budget be balanced every year, except in times of national emergency when we should have bipartisan support to not balance. At this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns, Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my distinguished colleague. You know, I say to my colleagues on the Democrat side, you know, we can sit here and blame Bush. You can sit here, on our side, we could blame President Obama, and we can have this high rhetoric talking about this issue and we need to get serious. But we are in a very precarious situation. This is all different. When you look at the statistics and you say, well, look, what's going to happen in this country in 10 years? In 10 years, 95% of all federal tax revenues will be consumed by payments of interest on the national debt and mandatory programs like Social Security. I think you would agree with that. Medicare and Medicaid is also there. This will leave just about 5% of our annual tax revenue available for funding national defense and other essential functions of the government. So this is an attempt here today, a very sober attempt to control budgets and do this through a balanced budget amendment. Now, you make a valid argument about the difference of these 49 states having an operational balanced budget, which is they don't have a capital outlay balanced budget. I understand that argument. But also, with this constitutional amendment, we are also projecting an attempt to have a rainy day fund where we set aside money for the emergencies. So you cannot hang your whole argument, the difference between the operational budget and the capital outlay budget, as a panacea for not voting for this, because we are at such dire, extreme situations. And talking about founding fathers, they understood the perils associated with debt. In fact, Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "The principle of spending money to be paid by future generations under the name of funding is but swindling for the future on a large scale." So we need to come together and understand this is not business as usual like we voted for the constitutional amendment some 15 years ago. This is brand new. We do not think we can go forward without controlling our spending, and this is an honest attempt to do so. So I think the high rhetoric on both sides of blaming different presidents and talking about past is gone. We're talking about the future. I urge you to support this resolution.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Either we will have the discipline to do what we have to, or this amendment simply puts those decisions in the hands of a federal judge, which we don't want to see, I don't think. I'll reserve the time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Holtgren, who is a member of the Agriculture Committee.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The time is now. This week we watched as our nation's debt reached an unprecedented level, $15 trillion. This debt crisis was caused by past administrations and past Congresses who refused to say no more spending. Washington spends too much and is underwater. Because of that, our national security and sovereignty and the standard of living for our children and our grandchildren is in jeopardy. Mr. Speaker, the time is now for this Congress to pass immediate, bold, and permanent spending reforms that will hold all future Congresses accountable for their spending. And now we have the opportunity to do just that by passing a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution. Let's forever change the way that Washington spends money and bring accountability back to Congress by passing the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. We've come close before, but there's no more excuses. The time is now. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York.
I reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey, who is a member of the Financial Services Committee and as a realtor may want to comment on some of the remarks made here today regarding the ability of people to borrow money under certain circumstances.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, first I will comment on the value of buying homes on credit. I think it's a pretty good idea. But when you go to get qualified for a home, the rule of thumb is that you should buy a home roughly not more than 2.5 times your annual income. If you compare that to our known debt of $15 trillion, our revenues of about $2.2 trillion, you see if our debt was a home loan, it would be 14 times our annual income. No lender would loan you money under those circumstances. They would say you are bankrupt far beyond any possibility of recovering. And that doesn't include the $60 trillion unfunded liabilities for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I don't know if that was really a very good analogy. Now to my point, there's an old political axiom that says any time you promise to steal from Peter to pay Paul, one thing usually happens. Paul votes for you. Total revenues, as I just said in answer to the chairman's question, are about $2.2 trillion. Total expenses the federal government spends, $3.6 trillion. Where's the money come from? Rather than balancing our budget like every hardworking American family, 49 other states, and virtually every local government in the country, Congress instead currently puts about 40% of every what has been described as vote-buying dollar it spends on our kids and our grandkids' credit cards, to the point where each American family's share of the national debt is about $125,000, actually in excess of $125,000. It will be hard to stop the spending. It will be like taking drugs away from an addict. Since Congress, Republicans and Democrats, have not shown the political will to be accountable, I believe a voter-mandated, balanced budget constitutional amendment is the only hope this country has to preserve the American experiment at representative self-government, and I urge members of this body to begin thinking about the next generation instead of the next election. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today this House will vote on the momentous issue of amending the Constitution of the United States. All of us should understand this is no symbolic vote. This is not a routine legislative act. We're asked to consider amending the most sacred document of a free people with a provision not contemplated by the founders. The argument is propounded that the times demand it. There is no other choice. Public opinion favors it. But as legislators, we must hold ourselves to a higher threshold to amend the Constitution. Is the proposal essential? Did the founders fail to consider the issue that now must be addressed in and only in a constitutional framework? Is there no legislative remedy? What are the negative and foreseeable consequences of such a constitutional mandate? And importantly, we must remember that but for one, all constitutional amendments are written in indelible ink. Desirous of a balanced budget, like everybody else, I must regrettably oppose the proposed amendment before us. It does not pass the higher constitutional threshold we must insist on. We balanced the budget just a decade ago for 4 consecutive years without such an amendment. It was a matter of political will, fiscal discipline, and successful economic growth. There is no evidence that such potential cannot be resurrected. There is ample evidence, however, that this institution lacks the will and courage to undertake the policy changes necessary. Political failure can and must be addressed here, and failing that, at the ballot box. The corrective is forging a political consensus, not amending the Constitution. In fact, to leap to the latter as an expedient is to admit the collapse of our democratic institutions and to abandon all faith in our collective ability to respond. I refuse to recant my faith in our ability to make the difficult choices necessary to achieve the desired goals of debt reduction and balanced fiscal performance. The proposed amendment also fails another test: do no harm. Had this amendment been in place during the economic contraction we just experienced, I ask for one more minute.
One more minute.
We would have abandoned the economic field to the Darwinian forces at work and guaranteed that the Great Recession became the Second Great Depression, condemning our citizens to their own fate, one which would have been characterized for a generation of want, double-digit unemployment, and endemic poverty. Why would any member of this body consciously choose such a course, especially when there are alternatives, although painful ones? Perhaps it's easier to pander to the clamor of the moment, or to seek out the seductively easy answers. Perhaps we seek to mask an ideological agenda to starve the government investment, cloaked in the more respectable argument of a constitutional amendment made necessary to balance the budget. For me, the founders' silence on this matter in the Constitution was intentional. They understood and expected that Congress would meet its duties and do its job. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. H.J.Res, who is a member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, no one can deny that our nation is on an unsustainable spending path that will lead this country to bankruptcy. Our national debt is now a staggering $15 trillion and rising daily. In the past 50 years, the budget has been balanced just 6 times, a losing record that has seen our deficit explode from $300 billion to $15 trillion. Congress has tried spending caps. Time and time again, one Congress sets them just to see the next Congress undo them. That's why we must have this amendment. A balanced budget amendment will finally force the federal government to live within its means, not just this Congress, but for generations to come. Politicians love their polls, and a recent poll shows that 75% of Americans favor a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. If we as congressmen are truly representing the people who sent us here, this is the day that we set partisan differences aside and listen to the people. 3/4 of Americans want this. We only need 2/3 of our members to make this happen. It is no secret to anyone here that Congress suffers from a 90% disapproval rating, and I believe it's because the American people are sick and tired of partisan politics and that their voices fall on deaf ears. Today we have a chance to show the American people that we are listening, that we do care about them, and that we do hear their voices. Republicans should embrace this bill. Democrats should embrace this bill. The President of the United States should embrace this bill because clearly the American people embrace this bill. It is a rare opportunity where we all win. Let us return to our districts with our heads held high, tell our constituents that their voices were heard, that we listened. Let's hug our children and grandchildren and tell them today we made history, and we have taken a giant step towards securing their future. For the sake of this great nation, do the right thing, pass this resolution. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Speaker, how much time do we have, please?
The gentleman from New York has 29 minutes.
And the other side?
The gentleman from Virginia has 51 minutes.
I'll reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. TIPTON, who is the chairman of the Agriculture, Energy, and Trade Subcommittee of the Small Business Committee.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, generations of Americans from now will stand in judgment of the choices that we make today. In my district, as I've traveled and visited with people from the farm and ranch community to small business owners to families around their kitchen tables, the message is clear. They're frustrated that Washington does not live under the same rules that they do. Those families gather each night to be able to balance their budget. Small businesses do it every day. 49 of our 50 states balance their budget. And the question is always raised, why doesn't Washington live under the same rules? We look at our European counterparts right now. Greece, Italy, struggling under their crushing debt. Will we follow that same path, or will we pick a better way? Mr. Speaker, the time has come, the day has arrived, and the hour is now. We have an opportunity to stand up for the American people. The one thing that we can all understand as we debate the different sides of this issue is one important point that is not debatable. $15 trillion in debt. Our children, our grandchildren, those of us today, we need to be standing up for responsibility. This Congress, at this time, has that opportunity. The choice we make here today does not end the debate. We return it to our states, to the people who sent us here, to make that final choice. I think the answer will be clear. The time has come for this Congress to embrace a balanced budget, to stand up and do what every American does every day. We need to pass this bill, and we need to pass it now. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Rakita, a member of the Budget Committee and a leader on this issue.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Virginia. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today as a co-sponsor of this bipartisan bill in full support of it. Rarely do we have a chance in this body to make fundamental difference. It's so easy, as I've learned in a short 10 months, for members of this body to say no, instead of taking the personal responsibility to make the tough decisions that need to be made. This morning, we have that chance. I don't think this chance will come closer in our orbit for a very long time. If we can pass language out of this House this morning, the Senate has to vote on it. The Senate Majority Leader cannot table it. And because it's a constitutional amendment, it has nothing to do with the President. He can't veto it. He doesn't have to sign it. It goes right to the states. And why is that so important? Why is that so different? Because finally the people of this country, of the state of Indiana, of my beloved 4th District, will have a chance to tell us, by ratification of this amendment, whether or not they want to live within their means. Instead of passing their bills from the federal government spending that's occurring here, $8 to $12 billion a day more in debt, whether they're done passing it on to their kids and grandkids. And I believe, speaking specifically to those of us who represent senior citizens, that most of them have grandchildren, and they don't want their bills passed on to them. Those that say no today, are really saying no because they don't want to lose control. They don't want the people to decide. They'd rather have that in their hands. They'd rather keep kicking that heavier and heavier can down the road so that citizens like this, Teddy and Ryan, and their kids can pay the bill. I ask the gentleman for an additional minute. I ask the gentleman to yield additional minute.
I'm happy to yield additional minute to the gentleman from Indiana.
That's what this is about. Ladies and gentlemen of this chamber, Mr. Speaker, there are 2 constituencies out there. And Mr. Posey from Florida said it well. we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And why that works around here is because Paul can vote for us. I asked every member here today, who stands for the constituency that can't directly vote for them next election? Who stands for their constituency that doesn't exist yet, but will? And because of the decisions that are made here on this floor, in this federal government, in this town, where too often up is down and down is up and black is white and white is black, we don't represent the constituency. We don't prioritize the right constituency at the right time. This is a chance to do this. This is a chance to not let us have that out anymore, to make us have the tax fight, to make us have the cut spending fight, but not allow the option of kicking the can down the road to make people who aren't here today pay for it. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this time it's my pleasure to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, who is not only the Vice Chairman of the Constitution Subcommittee, but has been a great partner in this effort to balance budget amendment to the United States Constitution.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise today in support of H.J.Res 2, a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
This is a challenging time in the life of our nation. Our economy is struggling under the failed economic policies of the recent past and under a mountain range of debt. We have an unchecked, spendthrift federal government that's placing a burden of insurmountable debt on our children and grandchildren. Washington, D.C. isn't just broke, it's broken. And the time has come to change the way we spend the people's money. And to do that in our national charter, the time has come for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I want to take a moment to commend just a few people who brought us to this day. I want to commend Speaker Boehner and the Republican leadership for ensuring that for the first time in 15 years we would have an up or down vote in the House and in the Senate on a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. But I also want to commend the gentleman from Virginia, Congressman Goodlatte, who throughout those last 15 years has been, as we say back home, like a dog with a bone on a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. His tenacity, his commitment to this reform, not singularly but predominantly, has brought us to this day, and I commend him from my heart. You know, our nation is sinking in a sea of debt. Just this week we passed $15 trillion in national debt. And the American people are tired of the same old arguments. They want solutions, not slogans. They want reforms, not rhetoric. The balanced budget amendment to the Constitution is an authentic, long-term solution to runaway federal spending, deficits, and debt by both political parties. And the measure we bring to the floor today is a bipartisan measure. It is nearly identical to the version that last passed the House with bipartisan support. It requires simply that the federal government not spend in more than it takes. It requires a 3/5 vote to raise the nation's debt ceiling, and requires any increase in taxes be by a true majority roll call vote. Now, while I support this historic version, this bipartisan version of the balanced budget amendment, I do regret it doesn't go further. I would that we had brought a version of the balanced budget amendment to the floor that included a cap on federal spending, strict limits on the judiciary, and a higher hurdle for Congress to raise taxes on the American people. But while this version of the balanced budget amendment doesn't have everything I want, I believe it will move the debate forward, adding to our national charter the expectation of the American people that this national government live within their means, that the income meet the outgo, would be a historic addition. So I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan version of the balanced budget amendment. Let's send it to the Senate by the requisite supermajority. And then let's let the states decide whether the time has come to put in our national charter the requirement that this government live within the means of the American people. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Velasquez.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New York for yielding. I rise in strong opposition to this misguided amendment, which will visit harm on working families, prevent government from responding to crisis, and cripple the U.S. economy. Under this amendment, it will become difficult to raise the debt ceiling, putting our country at greater risk of default. It is alarming that so shortly after averting the most recent danger of a default, the authors of this amendment will endanger our nation's credit so directly. Equally disturbing, should a war, domestic crisis, or natural disaster strike, our government could find its hands tied, incapable of responding swiftly. When crises occur, Congress must have the flexibility to respond. It is short-sighted and dangerous to cede this authority from the legislative branch. Not only will this amendment effectively slow our response to future catastrophe, but it will also undercut our current economic recovery, eliminating 15 million jobs. The fact is, if you like 9% unemployment, you will love this amendment. Mr. Speaker, our government has in the past been able to balance its books and create surplus. When President Clinton left office, we have a $5 trillion surplus. However, an unprovoked war unpaid for, coupled with tax cuts for the wealthy, erased this windfall and led to our current fiscal problems. If we truly wish to tackle the deficit, the most effective thing we could do is create new jobs. In the 1990s, economic prosperity helped drive deficits down. Rather than wasting this institution's time on a cheap political stunt, which has zero chance of becoming law, we should create opportunity and work to restore the American dream. That is a deficit reduction plan all of us could support. Vote down this misguided amendment.
Gentlelady's time's expired. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, who is a distinguished member of the House Judiciary.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, our national debt has reached a staggering $15 trillion. We're currently borrowing 43 cents on every dollar that's spent here in Washington. Think of that, 43 cents on a dollar. $1 trillion had to be borrowed from China. Our very sovereignty is at risk when you look at numbers like that. It's outrageous. Our great nation is on a dangerous path of fiscal irresponsibility, directed by a reckless addiction to spending here in Washington. Research has consistently shown that the American people want a balanced budget amendment. In fact, a recent survey found that 81% of those polled support the requirement that the federal government balance its budget each year, just like American families have to do. Today, each of us will have the opportunity to choose sides, casting an aye vote, standing with the American people on this issue, or casting a nay vote, opposing what the American people are demanding. The balanced budget amendment is a game changer. It will hold Congress's feet to the fire, forcing us to live within our means, just as every American family and every American business must do every year. It has become commonplace for Washington to spend money it doesn't have for projects it doesn't need. This is an unacceptable position for us to be in. Our constituents deserve better. Washington's spending binge has put a wet blanket over our economy. Small businesses are struggling to stay afloat, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a staggering 26 million Americans are unemployed, underemployed, or have given up looking for a job altogether. Small business owners tell me that the uncertainty that they're going through right now makes it so they won't hire people because they don't know how much money they're going to have. What we're doing here in Washington puts those small businesses at risk. That's why they're not hiring. Passing H.J.Res 2, the balanced budget amendment, would be a huge step in the right direction, and in my opinion, is the only thing that will actually work over the long run to get our spending under control here in Washington. You know, it's interesting. The President recently weighed in on this, and one of the things that he said about the American people is that they're lazy. I mean, what an incredible comment to make. That's absolutely not true. That's not what the problem with the economy is. The problem is that the government sector is sucking up so much of the funding now that the private sector has no funds to invest or go out and hire people and create jobs. That's the problem, not, as the President said, that the American people are lazy. That's absolutely not true. It's outrageous. This is not a Democratic or a Republican issue. This is an American issue. I had the opportunity to weigh on this amendment back in 1995 when it was last voted on here in Congress. I voted for it alongside most of my Republican colleagues, as well as 72 Democratic members of the House. I would urge them to vote with us today. Let's pass this. It's in the interest of the American people. Yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Speaker, how much time does each side have?
The gentleman from New York has 31 minutes. Gentleman from Virginia has 40 minutes.
I'll reserve.
Gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
This time, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Stutzman, who is the chairman of the Economic Opportunity Subcommittee of the House Veterans Affairs Committee.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great privilege and an honor to stand here today during this crucial and very timely debate. Standing here and listening to the debate on the floor is one that I believe Americans have been expecting for quite some time, because Americans are looking to Washington to see if leadership is going to come forward and do what American families do every day, what small businesses do every day. They make sure that they don't spend more money than what they have. When our national debt tops $15 trillion, it's clear that we are broke. When the Senate refuses to pass any budget at all, something clearly is wrong. When each child born today inherits nearly $48,000 worth of debt, something must be changed. My wife, Christy, and I have 2 young sons, Peyton and Preston. They're 10 years old and 5 years old, and their lives are entirely in front of them. And what we do today on this floor will determine the outcome for them and their family and for their children and for their grandchildren, because this has not been a problem that has happened just under the Democrats, under their control and under President Barack Obama, but this has happened over the last 30 years under both Republicans and Democrats. That is why this amendment is so important. Now, we'd all like to stand here and say, you know, we just need to do the right thing. And I agree with that. But the problem is, over the last 30 years, Washington has not done the right thing. We have accumulated $15 trillion of debt. Debt is a disease. It threatens to kill us. Today, we must act decisively, and we must act permanently and let the American people vote on our Constitution to allow them to send their voice to Washington and say enough is enough. Small businesses and families are waiting and watching to see if Washington is going to increase the taking on top of an enormous, convoluted tax code. I support this resolution, and I ask my colleagues to support it as well, and I'll yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
I'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Gingrey, who is a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I stand here in proud support of H.Res 2. You know, I was listening to arguments on both sides of the aisle, particularly from my colleagues, the Democrats, in regard to the gentleman from North Carolina talking about the ability for individuals to balance their own budget. He made a very convincing argument, a very convincing personal argument, but I would like to remind him that in 1995, the last time we had an opportunity, I wasn't here then, maybe he was, but the last time we had an opportunity to vote on a balanced budget amendment some 16 years ago, and it failed by one single vote. The debt that this country has accumulated since that time is $9 trillion. So the rest of us obviously need some constraints. We have proven that we do not have the discipline to balance the budget of this country. $9 trillion, and that's how we get to $15 trillion worth of debt. So I would say to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, please support this. This is an opportunity for us not only to show that fiscal responsibility that the 75% of the country want us to show, but also that they want us to show that spirit of bipartisanship, break the gridlock. I want to take just a moment, Mr. Speaker, to commend the gentleman from Virginia, Representative Goodlatte. I sometimes, as a physician member, think that there are too many attorneys in this body. But thank God for the gentleman from Virginia and from his ability and understanding of the Constitution, because he has gone to the Democratic side and the Republican side, not just this session, but for years, promoting this balanced budget amendment and bringing us all together in a bipartisan way to do something for the American people, and as the gentleman before me from Indiana said, for our children and our grandchildren. So without question, the time has come. This is my opportunity to cast a vote, the most important vote that I will have cast in 9 years. Could I ask the gentleman for an additional 30 seconds?